Well, for more on this, Obayda Hitto joins me now from Hatay, Turkey. So, Obayda, that's what the UN Emergency Relief Coordinator had to say there about Idlib, about the civilians there. So, what is the latest on the ground there as you are at the border?
The situation in Idlib province continues to worsen for civilians by the day. The regime backed by Russia has escalated their violent attack on the province over the last 2 weeks in an unprecedented way. Hundreds of airstrikes and thousands of artillery and rocket attacks have landed in heavily populated areas. Cities like Mu'arat al-Na'man and Saraqib have been, and Ariha, just south of Idlib city, have been a target of these attacks, especially in the last 10 days. Over 100 people have been killed, as you mentioned. There were also 3 ambulance workers that were killed over the weekend. The situation continues to escalate. People are living in fear, as Mr. Lokak mentioned. People are not sure why the international community continues to ignore the situation in Idlib province. Many of the facilities that we've visited over the last several months, as the escalation has been going on, have been a part of this de-escalation mechanism that has been talked about at the UN Security Council today. And these are facilities including medical facilities, water plants, and other facilities that are civilian oriented. And they've been given the coordinates. They've given the coordinates to this OSHA-run de-escalation mechanism. However, Russia and the regime continue to target these particular places. And we've actually visited one of these hospitals, and we saw that it was completely destroyed and put out of service. For this reason, many of the medical workers have left their positions. The ones who have stayed have tried to deal with the situation by taking their work underground in some cases. However, as you can imagine, with little help coming from the outside in terms of medical assistance or any kind of aid coming from the UN, the situation is very dire for civilians. Over 400,000 of them have been displaced in the last 90 days. And many of those people, at least 2/3 of them, according to the UN, are now living without shelter in northern Idlib province.
Well, Obayda, as you said, there are 400,000 civilians displaced. And do they have anywhere to go, really?
The situation is so dire in Idlib province. The places where people had fled to, where they thought it was going to be safe, such as Idlib city, are now becoming unsafe. There have been attacks, rocket attacks, actually in the middle of Idlib city, where 2 million people are living. There have also been recent attacks in Ariha over the last few days, which is also heavily populated. These are places that are far away from any front line. There's no fighting there. There aren't any kind of military positions there. There isn't any kind of militant presence there. However, these places are being targeted. The areas that people are fleeing to north of Idlib city, near the Turkish border, are also, you could say, very poorly supplied. The influx, the large influx, the sudden influx of hundreds of thousands of refugees was a surprise for the aid organizations in northern Syria. There aren't enough shelters, there aren't enough camps, there aren't enough supplies to distribute to all of these people who have fled. And so the situation continues to get worse. People are sick. They're living under trees. They don't have proper access to running water or electricity or even medical care. We've even talked to people who say that they've had to give birth under the trees that they're living in northern Syria. So as you might imagine, the people who are fleeing from this ongoing bombardment are really in a desperate situation and looking to the world to do something about this. And as we've heard today from people speaking at the UN Security Council, the situation is growing to be out of hand.
Thank you for that. Obayda Hitto live from Hatay, the Turkey-Syria border city.